Happy Sunday, everyone. It is your friendly neighborhood warlock Gubstep, and today we'll be telling the story of Jastor Gallywix, more commonly referred to as the Trade Prince. Without further ado, let's get started. Unlike most of the notable Warcraft leaders, Gallywix's story starts when he was just a child. Jastor's mother had abandoned him to become a pirate, but his father remained in Kazan to raise him. Jastor's father, Lozic, was a tinkerer who enjoyed experimenting with dynamite quite a bit. They both lived on Copper Street in Drudgetown, the slums of Kazan. He would regularly test his own explosive contraptions in the house, which caused quite a few injuries to him and his son. On Jastor's 10th birthday, he decided that he was tired of his father's antics and wanted to run away to take on a life of piracy. As he was preparing to run away, he witnessed an event that would change his life forever. The young goblin saw his father being roughed up by the Copper Street gang for money. The street gang was seeking payment for a cookie Lozic had stolen and given to Gallywix as a birthday present. Most of the bakeries had been destroyed during the trade wars, and sweets, like cookies, were very hard to come by. After witnessing this heartbreaking event, Jastor took it upon himself to take back Kazan. First on his list was to deal with the Copper Street gang. He retreated to his father's workshop and made a booby trap filled with dynamite. What appeared to be a bag full of riches was actually a bag full of explosives. The Copper Street gang thought that it was payday for them, but they were blown sky high instead. The young goblin took over his father's workshop and began his rise to the top. Many years later, he became an advisor to the Tinkerers Union and became the second wealthiest goblin in the Bilgewater Cartel. Gallywix decided that being number 2 was not good enough for him. He devised a plan to begin a hostile takeover of the Bilgewater Cartel. He bribed the current Trade Prince's staff, who was Trade Prince Maldi, and replaced his security with Gallywix's own mercenaries. He even bought the very land Trade Prince Maldi had his manor on. Most of the Bilgewater Cartel had seen the current Trade Prince as growing soft after he had his daughter, Nessa. Gallywix was infatuated with Nessa, despite being in the middle of a hostile takeover of everything her father had owned. The two fell in love for about 10 minutes. Gallywix ordered the destruction of Maldi's trade fleet, which was his primary source of income as he had been trading weapons to the Alliance. After this, he exiled both Maldi and Nessa from Kazan. Gallywix then later arranged Maldi's supposedly accidental death. His assistant paid some assassins to kill Maldi while he was in a swimming pool. Gallywix was supposedly furious and fired her after hearing about it. Despite Nessa being fatherless and no threat to Gallywix by herself, she remains exiled from Kazan. However, being the gentleman he is, the new Trade Prince sends a new painting of himself enjoying his riches to her every year. She returns the favor by sending plain boxes wired with explosives back to him. He is still madly in love with her, and upon receiving the explosive rig box, he says, "Who says long-distance relationships don't work?" Being a Trade Prince has its ups and downs. His own mother attempted to kill him twice when he obtained his position of power. The famous goblin painting, the Goblin Lisa, was commissioned by Gallywix to depict her. While his in-game model depicts him as a very overweight goblin, Gallywix was actually a very strong street fighter in his early years. The Trade Prince had a good rule over Kazan for about 20 years, until the eve of the Shattering. Gallywix is about to lose his position of power, and a new goblin adventurer in Kazan is considered his greatest rival for office. Deathwing causes Mount Kajiro on Kazan to erupt, and Gallywix's position is secured as he has the only ship off the island. He makes everyone hand over their life savings to purchase a ticket off the island. Gallywix planned on using everyone on the ship as slaves when the ship reached Azara. Unfortunately for him, the ship was caught in the crossfire of a naval battle between the Alliance and Horde. The ship goes down just outside of the coastline of the Lost Isles. The new adventurer that was planning on running against Gallywix saves his life, other goblins, and an orc named Thrall, the current war chief of the Horde. Despite this heroic goblin saving his life, Gallywix promises revenge on them. He uses the foreman's rocket sling to escape from the horde of angry goblins that want his head. He enslaves the remaining of the Bilgewater Cartel and uses them in the labor mines on the Lost Isles. The trade prince's rival that saved him would not give up so easily. They go after Gallywix and discover he has turned his rival's best friend Chip and his ex-girlfriend Candy against him. Chip perishes in battle against some adventurers, and the trade prince begins dating Candy. Most of the adventurers on the Lost Isles hate Gallywix at this point, and she is killed by a group of adventurers who cut her heart out. The adventurer and Thrall teamed up with the remaining goblins and orc survivors to confront Gallywix. When he is defeated, he promises that he will change how he runs the cartel. Thrall allows him to live and offers a new home for them in Azara, near Orgrimmar, on the condition that the cartel joins the Horde. Gallywix kept his word and reformed the cartel. The goblins were in trenches fighting the war against the Alliance and other foes. However, this is the first time that the Horde had a small race to worry about, and a large number of trampling deaths had been reported. Normally, this would not concern Gallywix, but Garrosh's accountants refused to pay soldier death benefits if the soldiers never actually got into battle. The trade prince offered a large cash reward to anyone that could come up with an invention to prevent these trampling deaths. The winner of the reward was Jebediah Gracklefutz, who created the famous goblin trike. Gallywix still needed to help his image, as most of the Bilgewater Cartel was still very angry with him. He announced that the cartel will not burden itself with neutrality, and announced to the entire cartel that they are now part of the Horde. He conveniently left out his battle with Thrall and the Goblin Adventurers. The Trade Prince has a new residence in Azara that can be found in-game called Gallywix's Pleasure Palace. He seems to be absent from his home, but Boss Mita, who is in charge of the goblin slums of Orgrimmar, seems to be holding things together in his absence. When Garrosh becomes war chief, the Trade Prince backs Garrosh's plan to go to war with the Alliance, as he saw financial value in removing the Alliance from the continent. Gallywix is very specific in his loyalty to the Horde as a whole, but does not openly admit it. The Trade Prince sent a handful of goblins with then War Chief Garrosh's army. He made it very clear that his orders were much more important than Garrosh's. He also expresses his distaste for Garrosh, stating Garrosh is likely to bankrupt himself in this war. He would later arrive on Pandaria himself with another group of goblins who he deemed the Plunder Squad Initiative. Their main goal was to uncover powerful artifacts on the continent. His presence in Pandaria was mainly to inspire the other goblins. He spent most of his time on his Uber Zeppelin, which featured luxury features such as rum slides and pudding jacuzzis. Some of the members of the Plunder Squad Initiative doubted Gallywix's intent on this mission. They were fearful that he would hand over any weaponry to Garrosh, who most of the goblins saw as a lunatic. Gallywix's best friend Druz and one of the higher-ups in the Plunder Squad, Zia, discovered an enigmatic scrawl during the encounter with lorewalker Shunchin. They intended to give the scrawl to Gallywix until they saw a vision of the future. Gallywix would refuse to use the scrawl. He would instead hide this weapon. Garrosh would then deem Gallywix a traitor and invade Azara and lead the assault on Gallywix's Pleasure Palace himself. The Trade Prince would protect the scroll himself, challenging Garrosh directly. It is Orcish tradition to duel for power, so Garrosh would not refuse this battle. Gallywix would eject himself from the spider tank and dive into Garrosh. He would grab the orc's tusks and smash his forehead into Garrosh's face, remembering his time as a street fighter in Kazan. Gallywix, while putting up quite the fight, would end up dead as he is accidentally killed by his best friend and loyal enforcer, Druz. When Garrosh acquires the scroll, the world of Azeroth would plunge into chaos and destruction under the rule of Hellscream. The races of Azeroth would fight side by side to try to overthrow Garrosh, but would fail until the Burning Legion would arrive and wipe out the rest of Azeroth. After seeing this vision, both Druz and Zia agreed that the scroll is better left in the hands of the Lorewalkers on Pandaria. The rest of the Horde races joined the Darkspear rebellion against Garrosh. Gallywix and the Bilgewater Cartel were the last to join this rebellion. This was prompted by the Corcoran only paying them 1/5 of the promised amount. Gallywix may not care about worker conditions, but don't mess with his gold. The Trade Prince was only made aware of this information after Grizzle Gearslip, one of the foremen in charge of his excavation of the heart of Visarge, insulted Garrosh's lack of loyalty and left. Gallywix is present at Garrosh's defeat in the siege of Orgrimmar when Thrall names Vol'jin the new war chief. He tips his hat and bows in respect. Shortly before the Burning Legion's third invasion, which kicked off the Legion expansion in World of Warcraft, Gallywix's Uber Zeppelin was featured in the Doomsayers pamphlet. It is unknown whether he was aware of this or not. Gallywix and his army led the defense of Azara during the Legion's invasion from the Orgrimmar rear gate. After that, he locked himself up in his pleasure palace. As much as the Trade Prince would like to be left alone, Marin Nagarfogger wanted something of his. Marin employs the member of the Uncrowned, a secret organization of rogues, to sneak into Gallywix's palace and steal love potion number 6. Marin wanted to replicate this potion and sell it to become rich. When Sargeras impales Silithus with his sword, Gallywix is notified of a new substance coming out of the earth. Gallywix immediately sends as many goblins as he can spare to mine it, which causes Bane, the leader of the Tauren, and Varrock, the leader of the Corcoran, to become very suspicious of him. However, the war chief, Lady Sylvanas, is fascinated with the mineral and says it will change everything. That is Jastor, the Trade Prince Gallywix's story up to Battle for Azeroth. What do you think of Jastor? Do you like him? Hate him? Do you think he helps the Horde any, or just uses them to secure his place of power? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you want to see future content by me, be sure to hit that subscribe and bell button. I will see you next video.